The highly sensitive person in love. Dr. Elaine Aron wrote a whole book about it. But in this video, I will share mostly from my personal point of view. Although if you've read the book, you might recognize a lot from it. Let's start at the beginning of a new relationship. Entering a romantic relationship when your senses are already heightened can make the initial butterfly phase even more intense. In this phase, it is impossible to take your mind off of your new love interest. And being apart even hurts. It's not unlike a heroin addiction, I think. However, as most of you probably know, this phase doesn't last. For me, it might last a couple of months and then things start to normalize a bit. And while I might miss the intensity, it's also a relief to finally be able to get back to my day-to-day, such as focusing on things like work. Interestingly, in those initial months, it's almost like my high sensitivity is on the back burner. It's almost like those love hormones dim the part of my sensory processing that wears me out so quickly. I can stay up for hours past my usual bedtime when I'm with my love interest, and I can have longer conversations. It's weird. But then it shifts after the initial getting to know each other part. When things settle, my usual sensitivities return, and that's the part when you know if the relationship is really going to work or not. If you're with someone who is open, understanding, and patient, you stand a pretty good chance of making it work. But of course, there will also be the kinds of people who don't want a lot of hassle or just aren't very tolerant. The only part that's in your hands is how you go about bringing up your high sensitivity and your own attitude towards it. I find it helpful to bring it up as early as possible in a relationship. I will indicate that sometimes I just get a little bit overwhelmed and then I might just need to be left alone for a little bit, or maybe there are ways in which my partner can help me out, and I'll indicate that. I'll try to explain as best as I can what it feels like and how, in the worst case scenario, it can paralyze me for a moment. This way they don't freak out when they see me freezing in analysis paralysis for the first time. Because I can understand that it can be scary or frustrating for an outsider, especially if you know you can't do anything to help. My breakdowns usually have to do with decision fatigue. For example, if it's been a long day filled with stimulating events and places, and then I have to decide what to order for dinner, sometimes I'm just not able to decide anymore. Especially when all I really want in that moment is to just be alone in bed. That's why planning quiet time in my day is so important, because it helps me to prevent those types of meltdowns. Of course, it also plays a role if your partner is an HSP or not. But in that case, they probably already know more about it and hopefully have a deeper understanding. In my case, most of my partners have been non-HSPs, or at least low on the scale. Something that plays a big role in my relationships is my need for alone time. Sometimes I'll ask for one day in the week where we just don't see each other. Even if you know it can benefit you greatly, it can still be hard to stick to that when you enjoy each other's company a lot. But sticking with it anyways can have an amazing impact on the quality of the time that you do spend together. Another workaround is living apart. That way you only see each other when you really want to. And separate beds or bedrooms can also be a lifesaver. I know, very unromantic. But rest is just that important for an HSP. When you're a highly sensitive person, it means that every sound, every movement of your partner lying next to you in bed will wake you up or keep you up. And I don't know about you, but when I haven't had a good night's sleep, I'm completely worthless and grumpy the next day. I just can't function. The last time I was able to sleep next to someone was when I was like 20 years old. We lived together and I didn't mind it at the time. But I have a strong suspicion that sensitivity gets heightened with age. Although I was also still drinking alcohol back then, and that was definitely a coping mechanism in retrospect. Of course, this is something that your partner needs to be open to, and you have to be careful about how you bring it up, because it might be very painful for someone to hear when they were looking forward to sleeping next to you every night. It's a sacrifice that you will need to discuss and see if it's worth it for you or not. I've had relationships where I've lost myself in my partner. My identity got so tied up into theirs that I didn't know where I ended and they began. That's a dangerous place to be for anyone, but especially for an empathic, highly sensitive person. Because when you're so attuned to another person, their well-being will decide yours. If they are miserable, you feel miserable too. So how do you prevent this from happening? You have to know what is the line that you will not allow yourself to cross. And this will look different for everyone. In my case, I have to be careful not to finish my partner's sentences. Not when we're alone and not when we're in company. It might seem cutesy at first that I'm able to predict exactly what they're gonna say, because us HSP empaths can be really good at that kind of thing. But what I'm actually doing is taking their individuality away from them. And sometimes my predictions are wrong. It's almost as if I'm molding that person into what I expect them to be. So it's best to just let your partner surprise you. I've been in relationships with both introverts and extroverts. With the introvert, it's simpler because you both prefer chilling at home or calmer places. And in the past, before knowing about my sensory processing sensitivity, I would try to keep up with the extroverts. But I really didn't enjoy that as much. Frequent gatherings and loud parties are always a drag. So what do you do when your partner wants to take you to these types of gatherings? Again, start by explaining why it's too much for you. And then find a compromise. Maybe you can go with 2 cars so that you can leave the event sooner. Or you only tag along every other time. You cannot help being wired this way, and putting boundaries for others to respect can go a long way. I'll often suggest smaller gatherings and places that are a bit more quiet. That way you're still social and outgoing, but you don't feel as depleted afterwards. When you ask your partner how to experience your HSP-ness, they might say that they were embarrassed at first when they didn't understand it yet. And I'd, for example, ask the restaurant to turn down the music. But afterwards, they have a better understanding and can even help you to look out for things to avoid. Here's some advice from a non-HSP on dating an HSP. I think it's important to be very understanding when dating an HSP and don't take it lightly. If an HSP tells you it's too loud, too bright, too much going on, be responsive and don't second guess the situation. You have to understand that an HSP is truly hurting and take appropriate action. You can't just take an HSP out to a party, or even if you do, plan beforehand so that the HSP can prepare accordingly. Very good tip. Your HSP partner also needs to rewind and recharge after being in an overly social setting. Again, make sure to plan accordingly. In short, show empathy, understanding, and just really listen to your HSP partner. Compassion goes both ways in any type of relationship. So it's important to also be understanding of your non-HSP partner's needs. But we just have to learn to do it in a way that doesn't compromise our needs. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. And if you want to have more HSP insights, also check out my other videos on this sensitive subject. And subscribe so you won't miss the next. But most importantly, do something today that scares you. Ayo! Sometimes it suddenly gets dark in the middle of your shoot. It's not that you forgot to charge the battery. It's just that the sun suddenly disappeared. That's all. We're done. Using phone lighting here, I mean, come on. Just for laughs and giggles. Phone lighting. No lighting.